What is going on? What is going on? My name is Ashton Anthony, and you see me and hear my voice. That means you are now tuned in to the Get Back podcast. This is another episode. We are back after the long summer. I hope everybody enjoyed their summer, but the fall is kicking in, and it is my last semester here at North Carolina A&T, and want to go out with a bang. The backdrop is different. The setup is different. We'll get into that at a later time, but for now, football is knocking at the door. The NFL season is back. College football is back. And I want to kind of change the tone of the podcast. Last semester was really uh, entertainment, just a whole bunch of topics. I'm not saying that that's going to be, thrown away with, but football is a big passion of mine. And it's my favorite sport. And I grew up wanting to have a platform to just talk about football and everything. So this semester, I want to have football as a big focus for this podcast. And we're going to change kind of like the feel of it to kind of be a talk show. So sorry if that like disappointed some people. And if people that wanted more sports content, here you go. But yeah, football is knocking at your door. The 2024 NFL season is beginning tomorrow night when the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, open their season against the Baltimore Ravens. 8:20, I believe, on NBC and Peacock. And we're just gonna get right into this matchup. The Chiefs are favored at -3, and this game is all about narratives. To me, big on social media, on Twitter, so I see a lot of tweets and everything. And obviously, I think these are the two biggest storylines with these two different teams. But obviously, Kansas City Chiefs defending two-time Super Bowl champions, going on the strike or the quest for their third straight, being the only team in NFL history to go on a three-peat back to back to back. And so uh, the last two Super Bowl champions, when they opened the season the following year, people like to say it's a Super Bowl hangover. Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Detroit Lions um, last year in a game that featured a ton of drops from Kadarius Toney, and then the year prior, the Los Angeles Rams would lose to the Buffalo Bills. So, like I said, people kind of think there's a Super Bowl hangover, and I'm gonna be honest. Like we're gonna get right into it. I think the Chiefs win this game. Um, I think Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to come out with a much not really different, but a more stronger um, energy, if I could say. You got all the headlines. Can the Chiefs three-peat? Can they be the first team to go back to back to back to back? Um, I think I said that four times, three times, back to back to back. Um, I think the headlines and the media and everything is going to influence them a little bit to kind of take the first quarter of the season a little bit more seriously. On the other hand, Baltimore is coming off of a great season. Lamar is the defending MVP. I didn't mention, in case you didn't know, that this matchup is a rematch from last year's AFC Championship game. And so, in that game, Lamar faced a ton of criticism. I believe he had two turnovers, um, and wasn't really a good game for Lamar passing. And I mean, let's be honest, with Lamar, that's everybody's biggest critic of Lamar. Oh, he can't win from the pocket. He can't do this. He can't do that. And so I think Lamar and the Ravens are out to prove a lot of people wrong this year as well. I just think that I, in life, I've learned there's three things, okay? Death, taxes, and picking against the Chiefs. The past 2 years, I picked against the Chiefs, and they proved me wrong, right? I know this is different. The season opener is different than picking them for the Super Bowl, but damned if you do, damned if you don't. I learned my lesson, and the the tough thing about this for Lamar, my friend told me this in the Twitter Spaces, is Lamar is suffering from this damned if you do, damned if you don't narrative because from people online. Because if Lamar and the Ravens lose this game, it's going to be okay. You can't, you know, you've proved to us what we know already. You can't beat Mahomes. You can't beat the Chiefs. But if he wins this game, it's like, okay, this is cool, but we know you're not going to win in the playoffs, right? Lamar has a losing record in the playoffs. So this game is going to be really interesting. Like I said, the betting, the Chiefs are favored by -3. So this game is going to be really close, in my opinion. I guess at least Vegas thinks that. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I wouldn't be surprised if Baltimore wins this game, but I'm going to be picking the Chiefs. So this is going to be my first pick for Week 1. We will get into the rest of the picks later. But yeah, it's a lot of storylines for this season. And this episode, moving on, transitioning, this episode is going to be a little bit, to begin, it's going to be a little bit shorter. We're facing like some technical issues and stuff like that earlier on. So we're kind of on a time crunch. So it's going to be a little bit shorter, but we're going to hit all of our segments that we have planned. So I just wanted to give a quick message to those that are watching, those that are supporting me. Thank you. It means a lot. Like this semester, like I said, is my last semester before I graduate. And I just really want to take advantage of everything that the university and the people here have to offer to me. Um, I put something on my Instagram story yesterday or 2 days ago. You will be seeing this on Thursday. But on Tuesday, asking for your guys' hot takes. And the responses I got, one, like, thank you for those responses, of course. But yeah, the responses I got, it was up and down, up and down. So I'm really excited to get into your guys' hot takes. And that's what we will be doing for this next segment. So the first one we got is a very special one for me. This hot take came in from the host of the Odd Couple on Fox Sports Talk Radio, Rob Parker. We're going to play it and we're going to let you guys hear his hot take.
Yo, what up? It's Rob Parker from The Odd Couple on Fox Sports Radio. And my hot take for this coming NFL season, the Chiefs are not winning 3 in a row. No way, no how. It will be Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. They'll win the Super Bowl, and we can stop that phony narrative that Lamar can't win the big game. The same narrative we had against Jason Tatum when he finally pushed through and won a championship with the Boston Celtics. The same thing is going to happen to Lamar this season. You just watch and see.
So, of course, I would just like to say thank you, Mr. Parker, for that. I don't, I don't know if this is a hot take. Like, yes, the Kansas City Chiefs are the favorite, right? Like I said, death, taxes, picking against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think Lamar and the Baltimore Ravens are right under them, right? Right under them. And you mentioned, like, it's a phony narrative that Lamar can't win in the playoffs. But I will say, like, the only other quarterback that has, from the AFC, that has been to the Super Bowl since Tom Brady left the AFC conference to go to the NFC with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. And that guy is playing in Lamar's own division. So I don't know if I could just flat out and say Lamar is going to for sure, be the guy to win the Super Bowl this year. I love Lamar Jackson, but we have to be a little bit honest. Like, his game against the Kansas City Chiefs last year, he was at fault. Like, yes, the coaching, the game plan for that game was out of wax, but Lamar made some bad decisions in that game too. But like I said in the opening segment, I think Lamar and the Ravens move like we have to prove something this year. So, but thank you for your hot take, Mr. Parker. It's always great to hear from you, and get up with you shortly. Moving on to the next hot take. This one comes from Rashad on Instagram. Thank you for this hot take. He says the Chicago Bears will be in wild card contention this year. I like this. I like this take. This is actually one of my predictions this year as well. Um, Obviously, you can't mention the Chicago Bears without talking about Caleb Williams, right? The QB that has everybody's anointing him as the chosen one for the city of Chicago. But the Bears have a great team. Like they have a great roster. You have Montez Sweat. You have uh, DJ Moore. You drafted Roma Dunze as well. Traded for Keenan Allen, Jalen Johnson, the secondary, Jalen Johnson and Jaquan Brisker. That defense is it's going to cause some problems for some teams, and I think that you might see a scenario where you're looking at three teams from the NFC North making the playoffs this year, with the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, who were in the conference championship last year, and the Chicago Bears, depending on which one of these teams in the seventh seed who are fighting. They might be able to edge one out. Now, I don't want to put too much pressure on Caleb Williams as a rookie, but you know that's the state of their roster, right? Like if you give their roster to a veteran guy, um, like a Kirk Cousins, like a Dak Prescott, like one of these guys, top top 15 QBs in the league, you would be expecting them to make the playoffs too. Like you put the Chicago Bears in the NFC South, they'd probably be favored to win the division, right? But they're in such a loaded division to where you don't want to pick them to be the division winner, and you're going to be in battle to be coming in second in that division. So just taking that on, competing with other teams like the Rams. Obviously, we know like the Cowboys or the Eagles, one of them are going to be wild card contention. And then a team outside of the 49ers from the NFC West, Arizona Cardinals. I'm not Arizona Cardinals. I don't know what I was thinking. Los Angeles Rams and Seattle Seahawks. One of those teams will be fighting for a playoff spot as well. So, I like this take. I really do. Next take, though. This next take comes from one of my friends, Every Bit of Doubt on Instagram. He says the Buffalo Bills will miss the playoffs this year. Now, this is a really hot take. It's up there. It's up there in temperature. And I think I agree with this one. You know, Now a big question is Aaron Rodgers ready to go for the New York Jets? He got injured on his first drive in the first game last year on prime time. But I think if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and ready to go, like that's still Aaron Rodgers. I think the Jets might be favored to win that division with their defense. Garrett Wilson. We know what Aaron Rodgers could do with a number one receiver. The Jets were competing in some games last year with Zach Wilson as quarterback. So just assume what they could do with Aaron Rodgers, and then you have the Miami Dolphins. Tua, he got paid. Got Tyreek. They upped the defense in the offseason. Tua coming off of a season where he led the league in passing yards. Obviously, the question for the Dolphins is can they sustain that momentum going into like the later part of the season, November, December, into the playoffs. The Bills, on the other hand, their roster kind of took a hit. They let go of some of their veterans, Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, just a Poyer, Matt Milano was hurt. They traded away Stephon Diggs, and now that offense is kind of relying on James Cook, Keon Coleman, who they drafted in the second round, and the tight end combo of Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So I think the play of Josh Allen say what you want, and there's another thing. Like we can't say for all you Josh Allen fans, we can't say Lamar can't win in the playoffs, but then ignore it with Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen has fallen short to Mahomes, and the year prior he lost to uh, Joe Burrow. You know, but we can know in the regular season Josh Allen will perform like a top five quarterback. So I think his his play will be able to carry the Buffalo Bills, but they were fighting. The Bills were fighting for a wild card spot up until the Dolphins kind of gave the division to them. Um, could they could they withstand another losing streak and have to run the table like they did last year? Could they do that again, or could they rely on that again? I don't think so. So I do think the Bills missed the playoffs this year, and I think the questions surrounding their head coach Sean McDermott get uh, a little more obvious. Like I think more eyes will be on Sean McDermott in terms of like his seat and whether it's hot or not. I think me personally, I think Sean McDermott. I think the Bills should have moved off of Sean McDermott last year because it's so many times that you could just get to that spot and not be able to get over the hump. So yeah, I like this take though. So another one on Instagram. This comes from underscore 301 dot Ian underscore my boy Ian. He says Ravens and Texans AFC Championship. Now I like this a lot, but like I said, and I always say this: death, taxes, picking against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're all going to get you. And this is not even for the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs have made the conference championship for the past 6 years. I believe that's every single season Patrick Mahomes has started, right? Since 2018 to now, the Kansas City Chiefs have been to every single conference championship. Now, I think the Ravens and the Texans have very good chances to make the conference championship. It's just which one between them. I don't think both of them will be facing each other in the conference championship. I'm gonna have to pick the Chiefs, obviously, to make the conference championship. Baltimore, like we said, we going over. Like Baltimore had the number one defense in the NFL. Got studs on their defense with Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Justin Matabuke. Lamar is Lamar. You got Mark Andrews. Their wide receiver core looks dreadful, but when does that ever matter with Lamar Jackson? But Houston Texans, on the other hand, my boy C.J. Stroud had a pretty one of the greatest rookie seasons we have ever seen. The Houston Texans, people going into that season, nobody thought the Houston Texans were a playoff team. Nobody thought their roster was any good. C.J. Stroud came in, and Will Anderson came in, and D'Amico Ryan, sorry, came in and turned that team inside out, turned it around, and they added dogs on that team even more. You obviously got Nico Collins, Tank Dell, but they traded for Joe Mixon. They signed Daniil Hunter, traded for Stephon Diggs. Like that team is loaded. Obviously, the question is, do the C.J. Stroud and D'Amico do they have a second year slump? But if they don't, you can't tell me the Houston Texans aren't, from a talent standpoint, aren't one of the best teams, like top three in terms of roster in the AFC. So I think one of these two teams will be in the conference championship. I just I can't agree that both of them will, with the Kansas City Chiefs looking for their seventh straight. Like just say that seventh straight conference championship appearance. This one comes from my boy Stan, board Stan on Instagram as well. He says Daniel Jones gets benched by the halfway point of the season. I think this is a freezing cold take because if the Giants are smart, they will bench Daniel Jones right now. I don't mean to sound like, you know, I think a big thing in like sports, in the media is like people attack these guys personally. I in no way I want to do that, but just going off of his talent, like Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. Um, and especially with the price, the amount of money he's getting paid, his play is nowhere near that $40 million. His cap hit is the third highest in the NFL this season, right? And if you look at his performance, like I said, we're talking about starting quarterbacks in the NFL. You're getting paid like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. For you to not have, for the last time, for you to hit 20 passing touchdowns in a season, you have Daniel Jones hasn't done that since his rookie year. 5 years ago. He's going into year six, and he hasn't sniffed 20 passing touchdowns in a season, right? Like, the fact that he's still being awarded an opportunity to go into a season starting is just insane. Like, the New York Giants are truly insane. But going back to the take, will he be benched? Like, at what point will he be benched? I think he plays this season, unless he gets hurt uh, earlier on. I think the Giants let him ride this year out. If he's being average, and you look at the Giants' quarterback room, their backup quarterbacks are Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. DeVito had a little hype, the hand gesture. He had a little hype movement when they put him in due to Daniel Jones's and Tyrod Taylor's injuries last year. But um, those quarterbacks are not much of a difference. Like, you could say DeVito is probably a little bit better than Daniel Jones, but when you look at it from a coaching standpoint, it's like what's really the difference? Like, if the end result is going to be losses, to me, why would I put him in? We're gonna make this dude at least try to earn his $40 million that we're paying him. So, yeah, but I'm just kidding. Like, it's not a freezing cold take. That's just my personal opinion on the Daniel Jones situation with the New York Giants. But we're going to get one. Actually, we'll do two more. Because a lot of like the other takes were kind of regarding the same things. Like I said, if your take didn't get mentioned, you know, I'm not doing that just because I didn't like your take. But like one of the takes was like the Chiefs will three-peat, and we kind of went over that. So, just want to get a little bit more variety in there. But like I said, I really do appreciate everybody that gave me a take. Like, thank you. And of course, we will do this every week for reactions after week one. And I will post like everybody's takes. So, like I said, thank you so much. But let's get two more takes in here. This comes from Hollywood Media. He asked for my Super Bowl predictions, and I'm not gonna. I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I do think Kansas City will be in the Super Bowl this year. Um, do I personally want them in the Super Bowl this year? No. I do think Kansas City will be in the Super Bowl this year. And in the NFC, I'm going to say it is a rematch of the Super Bowl from 2 years ago. Um, I think it's going to be Kansas City and the Philadelphia Eagles. You look at the Eagles, they brought in Saquon. Obviously, the wide receiver duo of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith is lethal. But I think this is a do or die year for Nick Sirianni. Like, just flat off the bat, the and that kind of makes me not want to pick the Eagles, but the Eagles are just too loaded of a team for me not to. I mean, if you look at some other teams in the NFC, You could look at the Detroit Lions, who could have had the 49ers beat if Dan Campbell didn't go for it on fourth down. The San Francisco 49ers, we will get into them later in this next segment. And you look at a sneaky team, some sneaky teams like the Green Bay Packers, right, who beat and just tore up the Dallas Cowboys, right? But for now, for me, it's just that the Eagles, they're too shiny of a toy right now, like for me to pick against them. But Nick Sirianni, like that collapse last year, they lost. Like, look at some of the teams they lost. They lost to. Sorry, they lost to the Arizona Cardinals, the New York Giants, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to close out their season. That is insane. And then you had stuff come out about Jalen Hurts going to people around the league to see what he was doing wrong, right? Going to former Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale to see what he was doing wrong. And that is just not a good look. But the Eagles, like I said, they're too shiny of a toy. You look at their acquisitions this offseason. You got Jalen Carter on the defensive front. Like, I have to pick them. So that's my Super Bowl prediction. We're gonna do one more. One more. So this one comes from Chris underscore Willis, and he says the Falcons will win the NFC South, get a wild card win. The Jets still suck with Aaron Rodgers. Now, like I said earlier, the NFC South is like, it's not a good division. I think it's the worst division in the NFL. And when you look at the Falcons, they have talent on that team. What they were missing last year was quarterback. And so how did they address that? They signed Kirk Cousins. And they drafted Michael Penix in that same offseason. I love Michael Penix. He was my quarterback 3 in last year's draft. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix, those were my 3. Um, yeah, so I'm very high on Michael Penix. But my question and my concern is Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins came off a great year, but he tore his Achilles, and he's 36 years old. How much does Kirk Cousins really have left in the tank? Like, let's be honest. He's not really a totally athletic quarterback to where he has to rely on that Achilles, as much as some other athletic quarterbacks do. But I don't know. I'm just not trusting, like, the picture 36-year-old quarterback torn Achilles is not a pretty sight to me. So, and then I don't know if we could totally, just disregard Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who won the division last year. But I think as far as teams go, the Falcons do have the best team in that division. Now, to your second part, the Jets will still stink with Aaron Rodgers. Like, let's be real. They're the Jets. They probably will stink with Aaron Rodgers. Like I said with Kirk Cousins, like Aaron Rodgers is old in terms of quarterbacks, like for the age of QBs. I don't think he's Tom Brady. He got hurt on the first drive in the opening game for the Jets last year. So I don't know. But I think this season, and I'm not wishing injury on Aaron Rodgers at all, but I do not think Aaron Rodgers will play a full season this year, and that will probably lead to another middling season for the New York Jets. 7 to 8 wins, or 6 to 7 wins. Not being in that range to draft a QB, but not being in that range to like make the playoffs. So yeah, that's what I have to say about the New York Jets. But like I said, thank you. That will close out our hot take segment. Thank you guys for all of your takes. We will do this every week. Next week will be your reactions to week 1, and we will keep it running from there. So With that being said, we're going to move on to the latter part of our show. If you paid attention to my podcast last year or last semester, um, I'm last year, I mean like last school year, but last semester in the spring, I had a top five segment, and I wanted to bring that over for this segment. And what I draw inspiration for this is I drew inspiration from Stephen A. Smith's Stephen's A List, and this top five segment is going to be storylines. My top five storylines going into the NFL season. So starting off with number five, I'm going to say, in my opinion, is the San Francisco 49ers window for a Super Bowl victory closing. Now, the reason I say this, and I've been saying this for the past 2 years, and they've proved me wrong, the 49ers have been in the Super Bowl conference championship for the past 2 years with Brock Purdy. And this semester, getting my words messed up again. This offseason, the 49ers were in the news for contract negotiations with some of their players. Brandon Ayuk, their wide receiver, and Trent Williams, their starting left tackle, the best left tackle in the league. But I saw this tweet from Adam Schefter when they paid Brandon Ayuk earlier this week or last week. And he says the 49ers will enter the 2024 NFL season with 8 players earning an average annual salary of $15 million or more. Those players being Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, Debo Samuel, Trent Williams, Javon Hargrave, Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. Those are 8 players, right? Number 9 is looming, and that man is Brock Purdy, who will be in for a big payday if he gets them to, let's say, a Super Bowl or a conference championship, right? And with the quarterback market, with all these contracts we saw set the market this year, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Tua, right? He's going to get somewhere close to right under $60 million. Like, that's just the hard truth. But I say, is the San Francisco 49ers window closing? And I ask that question because we look at some of these teams that use a lot of this money and how, in free agency and stuff for like a one-time Super Bowl run. We saw how it affected the Rams, right? When they won the Super Bowl, they put all their eggs in the basket money-wise for that Super Bowl run with Matthew Stafford. The Saints, they continue to push the cap back year in, year out, and they are currently still, they've been in cap hell for the past 3, 4 seasons. I think that the San Francisco 49ers spending this amount of money will catch up to them sooner or later, and we may see that this season. So that's why I answered that question. That's my number 5 storyline going into this season. Number 4, let's go on to the next one. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Dallas Cowboys are one of my teams that I think will be in danger of not making the playoffs this year. Just like the 49ers, the Cowboys had a lot of storylines in the media with Jerry Jones, contract negotiations with his players, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. CeeDee Lamb got his contract. Looks like the relationship between them is good and great. But Dak Prescott, on the other hand, we're a couple days away, or like literally a day away from the NFL season, but like 2 days away from Sunday when the Cowboys play a game. And Dak Prescott is still in the final year of his current contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak said something shady in the media as well about Jerry Jones, saying he's not paying attention to what Jerry Jones has to say. And that just, to me, just gives me a bad feeling about how Dak Prescott and his performance might be affected a little bit. Let's just be real. I'm going to pull up this quote really quick. So yeah, Dak Prescott said something. He doesn't hold no weight to what Jerry Jones says to the media, and then Jerry Jones responded. He was like, "I just want y'all to keep making him mad and motivates him. This is not the '90s. Like that man wants to be paid. I don't think Dak Prescott enters this year or gets a contract done before Sunday. Um, Dallas is in a tough situation, and for Dak to get paid, he has to lead them to conference championship or Super Bowl. Or maybe Jerry Jones is fine with the Cowboys being in that stake of just getting to the playoffs and losing. But the thing for Jerry Jones and the Cowboys that's tough is that if you want to move off of Dak, you're not going to be in a top of the draft position where you could just draft his replacement. You're not going to be picking top 10 to draft Shador Sanders or Carson Beck or the Quinn Ewers or the rest of these guys that will be entering this year's draft. So I don't know. It just doesn't give me a good feeling. But let's move on to number 3, and we have to head to Chi-Town. Caleb Williams. Will Caleb Williams fulfill the prophecy for the Chicago Bears? Is he the chosen one? Will he show that he is the chosen one that will break the quarterback curse for Chicago? I think he is, right? Arguably one of the greatest quarterback prospects we have ever seen. He was almost a 2-time Heisman winner, right, in college. Caleb Williams, like I said, is one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. Put that along with the just the great roster that the Chicago Bears have, right? A lot of people have eyes on, and also put that with, this has been a talking point, C.J. Stroud coming in as a rookie, leading the Houston Texans to the playoffs in his first year after the Texans were picking top 5 in the draft, actually picking number 2 in the draft, then going to the playoffs, getting a playoff win. People expect Caleb Williams to do the same thing. Caleb Williams was a better quarterback prospect than C.J. Stroud going into the draft. The Bears have a better roster than the Texans had. People are going to be expecting the same thing. Me personally, am I expecting that? No. I think the Chicago Bears will be competitive. I think the Chicago Bears will, you know, fight with a lot of teams and be in wild card contention. Do I think they make the playoffs? No. But if they don't, I don't want people to look at the Chicago Bears and look at Caleb Williams as not meeting expectations. But, like I said, it is still a really intriguing storyline going into the NFL this year. Number 2, though, take it to our matchup tomorrow and take it to this quarterback, 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. This storyline is, will he finally get it done, like you heard Rob Parker say? Will Lamar Jackson finally get the job done? Will he win the big one? Will he get to the Super Bowl? Not only get to the Super Bowl, will he win the Super Bowl? When you look at the NFL quarterbacks across the league, there's only 3 quarterbacks currently standing with multiple MVPs. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Lamar Jackson. Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers have rings, right? You look at the quarterbacks that have had multiple MVPs, league MVPs in the past. You have Peyton Manning, has Super Bowl victories. You have Tom Brady, the GOAT, has 7 rings, right? It is time for Lamar to get to the Super Bowl and win, right? Reigning MVP, the Ravens. This is probably the best team Lamar has had so far in his career. I know his receivers, right, aren't the best. He has Zay Flowers and a bunch of other guys in that receiver room. But look, you got to get it done. Point blank, period, right? Patrick Mahomes took the Chiefs to the Super Bowl with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, and a bunch of guys with Travis Kelce, right? You have Mark Andrews. You have the number 1 defense in the league. He has to get it done. And so that's why this is my number 2 most intriguing storyline, but it doesn't beat number one, and we all know what it is. Will the Kansas City Chiefs three-peat become the first team in NFL history to win back to back to back? We're talking Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the 90s, three-peat, right? This is something I've never seen in my lifetime. This is something a lot of older folks haven't seen since they were younger, since they were my age. To me, if Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid will do this year, Patrick Mahomes will be the certified greatest of all time. You can't deny it at this point, right? Two MVPs, been to the conference championships 7 straight years, three-time Super Bowl champion, right? I think he won Super Bowl MVP, so he will be a four-time Super Bowl MVP. If that were to happen, you have to make him the greatest. He passes Brady to me. A lot of people think he passed Brady already, and he's at number two for me. And when you go on the trajectory of his career, with this being like he hasn't even reached year 10, and he has four rings. He would have four rings, two MVPs, four Super Bowl MVPs. Like, that's insane, right? And that's why that is the most intriguing storyline going into this year's NFL season. But let's close out the show with the last segment. Y'all really think I was going to leave y'all hanging without giving you my predictions for week 1? Let's go ahead and predict this full slate of games. So I already gave you my predictions for Thursday Night Football. Then, for the first time ever, right, we have a game on Friday night opening the regular season, and that is Eagles versus Packers in Green Bay. In Brazil. Sorry. Eagles versus Packers in Brazil. And this is probably one of my most anticipated matchups this week. I don't know about y'all, but I'm really, 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 really high on the Green Bay Packers this year. Jordan Love looks like he's coming into his own. I don't know how the Packers do it with just finding QBs. They got Brett Favre, they got Aaron Rodgers, and now they got Jordan Love, who's looking great. And another trend that you see with the Packers, they always have a good wide receiver trio. Another trend that I think people don't realize is that Green Bay always manages to have a nice receiver room full of guys that aren't highly touted. Like, they're like developed. Like, they developed their own receiver room. You saw it with Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson. Like, Devontae Adams was a second-round pick, and he kind of had a slow start to his career. Now Devontae Adams is without a doubt top 5 receiver in the league. He's been that for the past X amount of years. And now the Packers kind of have a good wide receiver core, a young wide receiver core with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Dontavion Wicks. And what's intriguing about this season and why I'm so high on the Green Bay Packers this year is I think this will be kind of like that breakout season for that wide receiver trio. And I think Green Bay will be one of those teams fighting at the top of the NFC. I think they might be a Super Bowl contender by the time the playoffs come. So that's just me. And that's why I'm really intrigued by the Packers this year. But I think the Eagles win this game opening up. Obviously, like I said, the Eagles are just like that shiny toy of the offseason. Them adding Saquon, I think, could just open up their offense a lot more than it already is open. Make life easier for Jalen Hurts as well. I think the Eagles win this game. Moving on to Sunday slate of games. Pittsburgh at Atlanta. So we obviously talked about Atlanta now, favorite in the NFC South. Pittsburgh Steelers, on the other hand, big question for them is How will Mike Tomlin get it done this year with that quarterback room that they have? You know, you have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. That offense looked horrible in the preseason. I mean, these guys were struggling against second and third stringers in the preseason. I think it might be safe to say, will the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, will Mike Tomlin have his first losing season this year? Right? I know that's another, like, Mike Tomlin has lower odds of having his first losing season in his career as an NFL head coach than the Kansas City Chiefs do at going back to back to back, right? Like, that's how low of an odd we're talking about. But I think this season might be rough for Mike Tomlin. I think it is. Like, Russell Wilson is not the Russell Wilson we knew or we know when he was with Seattle. And Justin Fields is looking to revive his career. But in somebody who, Ohio State fan, like, loved Justin Fields coming out, you know, can't really say much about Justin Fields. Like, he has not meet expectations at all. I'm gonna pick the Atlanta Falcons to win this game, though. Moving on to another intriguing matchup, I think this might be one of the best games to come out of Week One. Arizona Cardinals taking on the Buffalo Bills. Now, you might look at this matchup and you might say, "Oh, Buffalo Bills got this easy," but I don't know, man. I think Kyler Murray is going to be back in his groove this season, right? You give him I know he's just a rookie, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best receivers we've seen coming out of college in a really, really long time. Like, he's a type, he was looked at as a Jamar Chase type of guy, Julio Jones type of prospect in terms of, like, going off of their talent level. And so, you know, I think this will be a fun matchup. And like I said about the Buffalo Bills, like, with Josh Allen and the Bills and Sean McDermott, like, having to lean on such a young core of players, will these guys come out the gate ready? And I think so. Like I was saying, sorry, will Kyler Murray? I mean, will the Bills? So, like I was saying, will the Bills? Will they be able to lean on? Will those young players be able to come out the gate ready? Like, if this is a high scoring affair, or on the defensive side, if Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison, if they're getting going, um, how will the Bills respond? So, I think this is a matchup you could see the Cardinals potentially winning this game. Um, and I think that's where I'm going to go with this. I'm sorry, like, I just gotta, I just have, like, something is telling me to pick the Cardinals this game. I may be wrong, right? You're not gonna predict all of these games right. You're not gonna predict all of these games right, but I'm gonna pick Kyler Murray in the Arizona Cardinals for this one. Um, Next game, Caleb Williams, his debut, Tennessee against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Look, I'm high on Caleb Williams. I'm high on the Chicago Bears. I mentioned to you in the hot take segment, like, why I think the Bears will be in wild card contention this year. I'm picking the Bears. I'm just not a believer in Will Levis for the Tennessee Titans. I'm not really a believer in the roster. Like, yes, they did trade for Legarius Sneed, but he is kind of older in age at the cornerback position as well. And I think DeAndre Hopkins, something's going on with DeAndre Hopkins as well. Um, a lot of these guys on the Titans are much older in age, and I think the Titans are hyped off of names. You got Calvin Ridley, you got DeAndre Hopkins, you got Legarius Sneed, like I mentioned. But these guys are not performing like how they were performing earlier in their career a couple years ago. So I'm just not as high as on the Tennessee Titans as everybody else. So I'm gonna pick the Chicago Bears in this matchup. I think they start the Caleb Williams era 1-0. Next, we got Patriots, the New England Patriots, going to Cincinnati to face off on a returning Joe Burrow coming back from injury, and the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a pretty, I think, is a easy matchup to make. Jamar Chase has reported back to practice as I'm like filming this. I know he was holding out to a contract dispute, but I think even if Jamar Chase hold it out, the Bengals are a better team than the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots are arguably one of the worst teams in football, top three worst teams for sure. And they're not start. They will not be starting Drake May this season. He's going to be sitting. Not this season. This game he will be sitting to open the season. So that leaves with Jacoby Brissett, and I think Jacoby Brissett is a average, like he's a basic quarterback. He's a bridge quarterback, and but don't expect anything more out of him, right? Especially against a team like the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati has a great defense as well, and so I think I'm feel really comfortable picking Cincinnati to win this game. And let's move on to the next. My boy C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans facing off against the Indianapolis Colts in Indy, picking the Texans. Listen, the Texans, we talked about it, all right? We high on the Texans. They have they've just beefed up their roster to surround C.J. Stroud with talent. They're looking to make a run. And the Indianapolis Colts are a good team as well, but I think the biggest question for the Colts is that secondary, right? Like, they're going into the season with like six players on their secondary, right? On their roster, six players on their active roster in the secondary. And how is Anthony Richardson going to be performing coming off that injury? It's been like he got injured early last season, so he had plenty of time. But we still have like we have to treat Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is kind of like a rookie because he only played 2 games last year. So we don't really know what Anthony Richardson is, and I think that is what's kind of scary about Anthony Richardson because he could be, you know, a mid guy, or he could be scary good because he has crazy traits. I was high on Anthony Richardson when he came out of college, right? Arm like Josh Allen, but as fast as Lamar, or like he ran like a 4.4. He's 6'4", like 240, running a 4.4 and can throw it like 70 yards. Like this dude is scary good, but we have to see him play. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts find a way to win this game, but I'm going to pick the Houston Texans. So then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence coming off an offseason where he got a new contract set in the market at the time he got paid, and going on and taking Tua Tagovailoa, who also got paid this offseason, setting the market at the time he got paid, and the Miami Dolphins. I'm picking the Miami Dolphins. Tua, one thing about Tua and the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel, they start the season off hot. Tyreek Hill coming off of a great season, almost having 2,000 receiving yards, was rated the number one player in the NFL by the players. Jalen Waddle, right? It's just something about the Dolphins that, like, the beginning of the season, unless these guys are going up against, like, Kansas City or, like, Baltimore or somebody, like, I think they should have I'm pretty comfortable saying that they should have a comfortable time beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I think Trevor Lawrence and new receiver Brian Thomas can put on a show, as well. But I'm gonna pick the Dolphins in this one. And then just going off the next three matchups, Carolina, New Orleans, and the Giants at Minnesota. These two teams, right? These are probably the worst quarterback matchups we will see all week, right? And I don't want to say that about Bryce Young because he's going into his second year, And the Panthers, as a franchise, was a mess last season. So I'm not gonna say that about Bryce Young, but you got Derek Carr with the Saints, Sam Darnold with the Vikings versus Daniel Jones. That matchup right there is, without a doubt, the worst matchup we will see in Week One. Like, let's just keep it a stack, right? But with the Panthers game, the Saints, let's like quarterback aside, the Saints are a much better team than the Panthers. And they're playing in New Orleans. Like, I every time the Saints play like a mid or not really a good team in New Orleans, I always give them the advantage because New Orleans is just a crazy place to play. So I think the Saints will win this game. And then going on to the Vikings and the Giants, not really spending too much time on these matchups. The Giants, I think with the quarterbacks that were given, this game is going to be a defensive, nasty game where the offenses won't have a lot of success, and it's going to come down to who can get the most stops. I'm going to pick the Giants to win this game just because I think the Giants are they edge the Vikings out with being the better team, having the better defense. Brian Burns on that defensive line to pair with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence, the best defensive tackle in the NFL. And then their secondary is kind of weak, but I think that defensive line will cause problems for Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense. But you look at the offense of the Minnesota Vikings, Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the league, and Jordan Addison, who had a good rookie season last year. The question is, is Sam Darnold going to be able to get them the ball? And I don't know if he will be able to. So I'm going to pick the New York Giants. Obviously, you can't ignore Malik Neighbors, who the Giants had, but obviously the same question: how efficiently is Daniel Jones going to get him the ball as well? The Giants are going to try to compete in life after Saquon Barkley, who they lost to the Eagles this offseason. So I think coming out the gate, these two teams will have a ugly performance on offense. But like I said, the Giants will edge this game out. Then the 4 o'clock games, we have four of them, starting off with the Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, Justin Herbert paired with former national champion and Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh making a return to the NFL. Listen, the Chargers, I don't really like their team. I don't like their offense as well. Like, their receivers aren't really that great. Their offensive line is good, though. I think the Chargers are going to try to establish a running game this year and not be too pass heavy with Justin Herbert. Um, and the Raiders, I think the Raiders do have the better team. And they just got Gardner Minshew, who is a big upgrade. Say what you want about Gardner Minshew, but he is a big upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm going to pick the Raiders to win this game, though. And then Seattle versus Denver. I don't know why this game always gives me nostalgia of the Seahawks versus Broncos Super Bowl matchup a couple years ago, where Seattle just it was like the number one defense versus the number one offense in the NFL, and the Legion of Boom just dominated the Broncos, and but yeah, the Broncos, like Sean Payton, Bo Nix will be starting. I'm not really expecting much out of the Broncos this year, for obvious reasons. Like their talent, like is not really that good. Um, and the Seahawks, on the other hand, you have a running back duo of Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN. I think it's going to be very hard for Geno Smith and the Seahawks to lose this game. So I'm rolling with the 12th man. I'm rolling with Seattle to win this game. And now our final two games, um, NFC East opponents, Dallas and Washington taking on Cleveland and Tampa Bay. Dallas will be taking off Cleveland. And look, I am not a fan of the Browns. But like I said about the Dallas Cowboys, a lot of eyes are going to be on Dak Prescott and how he's going to perform coming out the gate, after not getting a contract this season, a contract extension. The Browns have arguably the best defense in the league. I'm taking the Cleveland Browns to win this game. I think this will be a nice sluggish game. I don't think Dak is going to get anything going. I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to get anything going. But I think Cleveland will edge this game out against the Cowboys with their defense. Two premier edge rushers going at it with Myles Garrett, who won Defensive Player of the Year last year, and Micah Parsons, right? The Cowboys get Trayvon Diggs back. And yeah, CeeDee Lamb got his contract, but I'm going to take the Browns to win this game. And then our last 4 o'clock game, mid-afternoon game, Washington taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a toss-up. This is probably like the closest game to me that I have trouble like picking, because I think these teams are kind of like the same. We don't know how Washington is going to perform. Like, we don't know how Jaden Daniels, rookie and Heisman winner of the previous year, Jaden Daniels is going to come out the gate. I think it's a coin flip to me though. But in these scenarios where I can't pick, I usually go with the home team. So give me Tampa Bay. This leads us to Sunday Night Football, a rematch of the playoff matchup last year. Matthew Stafford facing his old team of the Detroit Lions, returning to Detroit on Sunday Night Football. I think you get the same result, though. Give me the Detroit Lions. Detroit, I think, is motivated than ever, coming off of that victory. I'm coming off that loss that should have been a victory in the NFC Championship this year. I think Detroit is wanting to get back to that, wanting to get to the Super Bowl for the first time, I believe, in franchise history, right? And Dan Campbell's going to have this team ready coming out the gate. So I'm going to pick the Detroit Lions. And then ending off week one, Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers, right? Going to San Francisco to take on his rival, the San Francisco 49ers. I say that because if you don't know, Aaron Rodgers does not do well against San Francisco, against the 49ers, especially in San Francisco. And like I said, this is kind of how is Aaron Rodgers going to play, because last year, Aaron Rodgers' first season with the Jets, his first game with the Jets was on Monday Night Football, and he exited the game on his first drive, and he was out for the season. He never played a game after that. So Aaron Rodgers is going to have to shake a little rust for this game. Like I said, the Jets have a really good team, I think, that could compete with the 49ers here. Garrett Wilson, that defense, the Williams brothers, Quincy and Quentin Williams, Sauce Gardner, and the rest of that defensive in that secondary. But the 49ers, you know, like I said in my thing, is this the year the 49ers window is closing? I don't think you see it in week one, because I picked the 49ers to win this game. And with that being said, this brings us to a close on our very first sports episode. Got through the I don't know if you can see it from here, but got through the our segments, and I would just like to say, for all of you guys that are watching, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to tune in next week and send in your reactions that I will post on my Instagram story for week one. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Football is back. Sit back, enjoy it, just take it in. We're going to have a long season, 18 weeks plus playoffs, and college football. We didn't even get into college football this episode. I promise you we will get into college football next week, because this past week of college football was a very exciting week. But yeah, we will get into college football next week. And like I said, thank you for tuning in. With that being said, I am Ashton Anthony, and this is the Get Back Podcast.